Hey guys, Nate Morris here, MasterLSAT.com. So I went ahead and created an LSAT question for you guys that's modeled after an official, actual LSAT question that so many of my students get wrong. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video, do the best that you can, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so out of all the candidates in the running for Prime Minister, Smith would undoubtedly make the best leader. The reason for this is simple. He's the only candidate in the race that is a good orator. The other candidates are not. Many people would agree that anyone who's a good orator would make a better leader than anyone who is not. Okay, so the argument's very simple. The conclusion is that Smith would make the best leader out of everyone running for Prime Minister, and the support for that conclusion is that he's the only one who is a good orator. So we're trying to weaken this argument. We need to find an answer choice that says, no, just because support doesn't mean conclusion. Just because someone is a good orator doesn't automatically mean that they are a better leader than other people who are not good orators. So precisely one of these answer choices is going to do that. The other four are not. Let's go ahead and look through them. A, although Smith is a good orator, he's been known to have numerous objectionable opinions. The reason A is wrong is because it doesn't weaken the conclusion. The conclusion is about whether Smith would be a better leader. And A has not been shown to be relevant to the conclusion. Just because he has numerous objectionable opinions doesn't necessarily make him a better or worse leader, right? What are those objectionable opinions? What does that even mean? He's a Yankees fan, right? He likes Taco Bell, right? There's not nearly enough information in A to tell us that it has anything to do with his leadership skills. And by the way, maybe the other people running also have objectionable opinions, and so therefore this doesn't necessarily even make him worse than them. B, all of the past prime ministers who were not good orators did their jobs adequately. No, this is wrong, because just because they did their jobs adequately doesn't mean they wouldn't have done their jobs better had they been good orators, right? The person in this argument is not trying to say that you can't be a good orator and do your job adequately. The person making this argument is simply saying that if you're a good orator, you're going to be better than someone who's not a good orator. So telling me that people who were bad orators were adequate at their job doesn't mean that someone who was a good orator wouldn't have been better. C, all of the past prime ministers who were not good orators had all the other character traits of strong leaders. Okay, but at the end of the day, were they good leaders or were they not? This doesn't weaken the conclusion. The conclusion is assuming that someone who's not a good orator is a worse leader as a result. That might have been true for all these past leaders in C. They might have all been terrible leaders, and so therefore this does not weaken the argument. D, bingo, this is the correct answer. Skill at oration is not a factor that contributes to leadership performance at all. In other words, the support of this argument has nothing to do with its conclusion. In other words, just because he's a better orator has nothing to do with whether he'd make a better leader. This is a perfect way of weakening the argument and therefore is the right answer. It tells you that oration skill has nothing to do with being a good leader. E, this was the trickiest answer by far and probably the one that most of my students picked that got this question wrong. Being a skilled orator is not a sufficient condition for good leadership. So at face value, it seems to poke a hole between the support and the conclusion. The problem is it's not strong enough to weaken the argument, because just because it's not a sufficient condition for good leadership doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't a sufficient condition for better leadership than someone who's not a good orator. Just to illustrate what I mean by that, there's a difference between absolute and relative. Saying someone is a good leader is not the same thing as saying that they are a better leader than someone else. In other words, maybe none of the people running are good leaders. Maybe the person making this argument is simply saying that Smith is going to be the best out of all of the terrible people running. He's going to be the least bad. He's going to be the best. You know why? Because he's the only one who's a good orator, and the other ones are bad orators. So maybe they'll all be terrible. He'll just be the least terrible. And therefore, if you tell the person making this argument that, hey, E is true, being a skilled orator is not enough to know that you're going to be a good leader, he would say, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's enough to be a good leader. I don't even necessarily think Smith is going to be a good leader. I think it is, though, enough to know that he's going to be a better leader than all the other ones who are not good orators. So therefore, E does not weaken this argument. It's not strong enough. It's sort of a weaker version of the correct answer, D. And just to illustrate, let's pretend instead of oration skills, what if this argument said that out of everyone running, Smith would be the best leader because he's the only one who doesn't strangle puppies in his spare time? Well, if you said to this person, well, not strangling puppies is not a sufficient condition for being a good prime minister, this person would say, yeah, of course that's true. Of course that's not enough to make you a good leader, but it's certainly enough to know that you're not insane and that you'll be a better leader than the 5 other people running who do strangle puppies in their spare time, right? I don't know about you, but if there were several people running for leader of a country and one of them was the only one who didn't strangle puppies in their spare time, I wouldn't need to know much. I would probably just vote for that person not knowing anything else, right? I would assume they'd be better than the others. Does that mean that I know they're going to be a good leader? No, I just know they're not going to be absolutely terrible and insane, right? At least based on what I do know. So therefore, that's why E is not enough to strengthen the argument, because there's a major difference between whether something makes you a good leader versus whether something makes you a better leader than someone else. I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to comment with the answer that you thought was right. And if you found this video helpful, definitely be sure to subscribe for many more videos like this.